Good afternoon. My name is Darren Morrison, and today I'm going to be talking about government surveillance, specifically Department of Homeland Security's Project Hostile Intent. That's right, Big Brother is watching you. And the action that I'm going to be testing specifically is using software to determine threat levels and hostility to national security. Basic outline. I'm going to go over a brief summary, the issues involved with this software, the ethical actors involved, the actions being reviewed, the ethical standard that I will be using, the ethical arguments, and the unethical arguments. And then I will wrap it up with an overall what I think of this action. Summary of Project Hostile Intent. It was created by the Department of Homeland Security, and it's a software that analyzes travelers in order to identify threats to security. It's going to detect cues like microexpressions that people give off that will alert them to any malicious, deceptive, or hostile intent on a traveler's part. The Department of Homeland Security has asked researchers to develop software for use in airport terminals. So every time you go through the airport, they're going to be watching you pretty much all up in your space. Things like variation in speech, like pitch and loudness, as well as physiological cues like blood pressure, pulse, respiration, skin moisture are all going to be measured and analyzed. However, there's a lot of controversy over privacy rights as well as the accuracy of the software itself. Issues with the software / project. There's a lot of cultural issues. So what I mean by this is basically a lot of people, they pronounce things differently. Maybe certain cultures, they have different tones when saying different things, or they react to things in a different way than other cultures would. And you know, a computer is not going to be able to determine, oh, this person is Chinese and he felt disrespected, so maybe that's why he's raising his voice and his blood pressure is spiking through the roof. A computer program, it's going to be hard for it to determine and eliminate these cultural issues and biases. Additionally, we don't know if terrorists can cheat the system. We don't know if there's a way to get around it yet. It hasn't actually been used, so yeah, that's another problem. Microexpressions are also involuntary. You don't do these microexpressions consciously. It's just something that subconsciously happens in your body. And they can occur for any number of reasons. You may be having high blood pressure and skin moisture because, I don't know, a family member across the country is in the hospital or something, and maybe that's why you're traveling to go see them. There's too many factors involved for this computer program to accurately determine a threat, in my opinion. Professionals also say that this microexpression interpretation is a social science, so you need human interpretation. Now, if there were human interpretation involved, I would say yes, it would be a little bit better to be using such software. Accuracy of machines, not good enough. Too many factors for computer, as I said. Software will not eliminate terrorism. It might reduce terrorism and bombings and threats inside of airport terminals, but on a grander scale, you know, it's putting a dent in terrorism, but it's not going to stop it. You know, it's gonna slightly better humanity, but terrorism's not going to stop because of such software. And the software has never been tested in real world situations, which is a big issue. Let's see here. All right, the ethical actor involved, the Department of Homeland Security. The ethical actions involved. The DHS, Department of Homeland Security, uses invasive software to identify threats to national security. And the second one, which is more specific, the DHS is going to be using this invasive software without the public's knowledge or consent, which many people are concerned about. Of course, you know, with constitutional rights and whatnot and all that jazz. Ethical standard that I will be using is utilitarian ethics, which, for those of you who don't know, the provisions are as follows. 1, does anyone benefit or gain anything from the actions being reviewed? And 2, does anyone benefit or gain from the actions being reviewed? And does anyone lose anything from the actions being reviewed on an individual basis? And 2, do the actions of the ethical actor benefit or detriment the greater good of society? So we're going to be weighing these two against each other. And it is my personal opinion that when the greater good outweighs the individual good, that determines whether something is ethical or not. So keep that in mind. Alright, so my analysis of Action 1. The DHS uses software to identify threats to national security. This software is going to result in a gain slash benefit for the majority of individuals, all except for actual terrorists and threats, obviously, because they don't want to go to jail and, be probed by government officials in Guantanamo Bay and all that good stuff. So, I would say every individual who isn't a threat is benefiting from this. Therefore, the DHS is going to be benefiting the greater good of society by using the software. However, on an individual basis, individuals will also lose privacy and time if detained, as some say. The question is each individual's privacy and time more important than everyone's safety? Basically, law-abiding citizens, they have nothing to really hide. Their privacy holds less importance than their safety. Now, if you have nothing to hide and someone's, analyzing you for the greater good of your safety, you're really not losing much. I mean, you're not even aware that this is happening in the first place. Not to mention, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. It's really only the threats and the people who are suspicious that have something to hide, drug smugglers, whatever it may be, terrorists, bombers, whatever. Time will not be lost to all people. It's only going to be lost to a relatively small percentage of people, i.e. the ones who are being detained because they are suspicious. So overall, I would say the use of this software is an ethical action using utilitarian ethics provisions because it benefits the greater good of society and individuals don't lose much unless they are deemed a threat. And only a small percentage relatively compared to the overall population are going to be deemed as false positives. Action 2. The DHS uses invasive software without the public's knowledge or consent. Citizens will lose their privacy. Citizens only lose time if stopped and searched / interrogated. Those who are not stopped are unaware they have lost privacy, although they have still lost privacy, but they're unaware of it. So does it really matter at that point? That's one of the big questions involved. The country gains safety and lives are saved. Not consenting would arouse suspicion and most likely attract interrogation. So obviously, if they were asking for your consent, that would kind of defeat the purpose. So consenting is a little bit irrelevant, but a lot of people like to complain and say, oh, well, we should be consenting to such action, but that would really defeat the purpose. Or, some might say it would benefit the purpose. It would benefit what they're trying to do, because if you don't consent, then boom, you're instantly thought of as a threat. Alerting the public of such software means terrorists can now find ways to get around it and are aware, leading to less safety for all citizens. Now that's extremely important. I want to say that's the most important point on this slide, because if a terrorist knows about this software, they are now able to find ways to get around it, to bypass it. So if they have no idea that this is being used, if you really think about it, it leads to more safety, because now if they don't know this is being used, they have no idea that they're being scanned. So with that last point, I would say that last point kind of outweighs a lot of the other points, or basically all the other points. So I would say use of this software in private is also an ethical action using utilitarian provisions, because doing so would lead to a safer environment in the long run. So in conclusion, Project Hostile Intent is overall an ethical action. It could be less ethical if the DHS were to inform the public and thus terrorists. And it could also be more efficient, if used with human interpretation, maybe training programs for people to, in the TSA to get accustomed to such software. And actual field tests are going to be needed to really determine the accuracy and, the usefulness of such software in a real-world situation. So that about wraps it up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, they're welcome after the presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.